Hello everybody, and welcome to what I promise will be a short video. Today I'm looking at a kart racer, which is a little bit different from the usual JRPG or Japanese stuff that I cover, but I'm actually a kart racing tragic, something I don't talk about nearly as much as I might like to, because there just aren't that many kart races that are released. But this one is called Meow Motors, and I wanted to do this video because I bought the game without a second thought, really. I do like cats, and Meow Motors is a great name for a kart racer, which is all about racing cats around tracks. But I also wanted to do a video to talk about kart races because it is a genre that is underdone. There aren't too many great examples of it out there through the history of video games. It's one that Nintendo obviously dominates with Mario Kart, but underneath that, there hasn't been too much. There's been some decent attempts. Crash Bandicoot has a decent racing game, and there's actually another one coming later this year, which, from the limited amount of time that I've had with it, is a lot of fun. There was also Diddy Kong Racing on the N64, which was one that people tend to remember quite well. There was a Chocobo racing game that was released on the PlayStation, which was decent and enjoyable, especially if you're a fan of Chocobo and Final Fantasy. It was a good bit of fan service in there for fans of that series. Other than that, there hasn't been too many. Like I said, it seems to be a genre that developers struggle with, and I'm not entirely sure why. I suspect it's because of the balancing that's required. On top of making sure that you get the racing mechanics right, you also need to make sure that it's fast-paced and actiony enough that in multiplayer you can have a good laugh with it. And you've got to also make sure that that those weapons are balanced in such a way that you don't feel like you're being too hard done by. There's not any weapon that's particularly overpowered, and that people who are both beginners and experts alike can get in there and have a good time with it regardless of their skill level. So that's a lot of balancing stuff to deal with, and I guess that's what might hold back some developers. I guess the other reason is that you often don't have a license to work with, and these games need to have a lot of characters, which means the license, I guess, would be quite expensive if you were able to find something to license. Now, this game is unlicensed. Meow Motors is unlicensed. They're generic cats. They don't belong to any particular franchise. So it's a fairly cheap game, and it feels like a fairly cheap game. So I guess that kind of answers part of the question. If it doesn't have that license, you do feel like the game is immediately B tier as such. But I've actually enjoyed my time with this game. I've had a lot of fun with it. I think it's actually a pretty decent B tier attempt at the genre. The racing itself is quite nice, as you would have seen from the footage. The tracks are nice and wide, which means that it's immediately accessible to people who aren't racing game veterans. There's a lot of weapons to unlock, and they unlock nice and slowly as you play, so you get a chance to get familiar with each weapon before you get the next item thrown in. By the end of it, there are quite a few items, and that's a good thing. But the game eases you into it quite nicely. There's also a decent variety of gameplay modes, in addition to the multiplayer, which is of course essential for this kind of game. There's a standard race in single player. There's a mode where you need to wipe out as many opponents as possible within a certain amount of time. I can't remember what that's called. I call it Strike for the heck of it. But there's that mode, and then there's also a time trial mode. There's also a drift mode where you need to get as many points as possible by drifting around corners, and the better you drift, the more points you get, and all that kind of stuff. I must admit, of everything in this game, the one thing I really did not enjoy is the drifting mechanic, because I felt it was quite loose, and even despite the width of the roads, it was very easy to roll yourself off and bounce into a wall, which in the other in the standard race mode or the strike mode, that's not such a big deal, but in the drift mode it becomes very hard to get those points, because if you crash into a wall, all the points you've lost from that drift attempt disappear and you don't get too long to work with it. As a result, it took me a long time to get the 3-star rating in those drift modes, and I really struggled to unlock a lot of the levels towards the end of the game, which is unfortunate, especially since this game is obviously targeted towards younger players as well. I think they might struggle with it a little bit more than perhaps the developer intended. Nonetheless, like I said, it is a lot of fun, and the environments are nice and entertaining, they're colourful, they're bright. There's nothing that's really offensive about how any of this game works. There's no bugs that I really came across. There's a bit of popping, I guess, from the visuals, but it's not a big deal, and it's colourful, the music's inoffensive. It's a very safe kart racer. But the thing is, with the PlayStation 4, that's not actually such a bad thing anyway, because the PlayStation 4 doesn't have a lot of kart races, at least until Crash Bandicoot comes out later on. I can't think of another one. Oh, hang on, there's All-Star Fruit Racer, which is decent enough, but All-Star Fruit Racer was also, it also had issues, and it tried to, I guess, be a little bit of a more mature racing game as well, whereas this one is very much targeted in the same way that Mario Kart is targeted. It is for young people. Older people can still enjoy it, but it's all about that kind of multiplayer fun and that simplicity of gameplay and the brightness of the environments, and making sure that you never feel like you're not welcome in the game. So that's Meow Motors, not races, Meow Motors. Meow Motors is, like I said, it came out of nowhere. I don't think anybody really noticed it, but if you're into your kart races, it's actually not as bad as you might think. You're probably going to gloss over it if you see it in the store, because it doesn't look like it's anything particularly special, and it's not a special game by any means, but it's fun. And if you're a kart racing tragic like I am, you'll have good fun with this one. It's not too expensive, and yeah, it's worth a look. Thanks very much for watching this video, everyone. I'm sure I'll be back with something to do with Japanese games again soon enough. But in the meantime, do let me know if you're a fan of any kart races in the comments, and we'll see you at the next video. Thanks very much.